Have you ever felt the quiet ache of life slipping past? The sensation that the days are passing in a blur, and yet something small, a gesture, a glance, a word, can make your heart skip a beat? That was me, Eleanor, 56, standing in my kitchen on a particularly frigid December morning, staring at the tiny package Alex had left on my counter. I barely knew him, yet already his presence stirred something I hadn't realized I'd been missing. Alex was 32, energetic, with a warmth that seemed to radiate without effort. We had met weeks earlier at a local charity event, where he had been volunteering, moving boxes and arranging donations with a quiet, methodical efficiency. At first, I noticed nothing extraordinary. He was courteous, attentive, and surprisingly thoughtful, but I told myself he was just polite. Yet the way he listened, the way he lingered on my words just slightly too long, planted a seed of curiosity that grew with every encounter. My life, by contrast, had grown predictable. My marriage, once full of laughter and intimacy, had settled into a routine of mutual respect and quiet companionship. I had convinced myself that this was enough, that the steady rhythm of comfort was preferable to the chaos of passion. But something about Alex's youth, his energy, and his unassuming attention made me question that notion. That morning, the scarf, soft, pale blue, cashmere, rested in its wrapping on the countertop. It was simple, unassuming, yet it carried a weight I couldn't ignore. Why had he thought of me? Why did it matter to me so much? I traced the edges of the package with my fingertips, feeling a thrill that was equal parts excitement and fear. As I stood there, my thoughts tangled with memories of earlier encounters, the way he had helped me reach a high shelf, the fleeting brush of his hand against mine, the quiet laughter we shared over trivial jokes. Each moment had been innocent, yet together they formed a mosaic that began to haunt my heart. I realized then that the central conflict of my life had quietly shifted. I was no longer simply Eleanor, the composed, practical woman navigating a stable, predictable existence. I was Eleanor confronted with temptation, with possibility, with the startling realization that even at 56, the heart could awaken in ways that defied reason. And there he was, somewhere just outside my door, a messenger of warmth and uncertainty. That small gift, unassuming yet charged with meaning, marked the beginning of something neither of us fully understood. Something was about to change, something that would challenge my sense of self, my loyalty, and my understanding of what it meant to truly feel alive. I picked up the scarf, inhaled its faint scent, and felt the first flutter of anticipation. I didn't know what was coming, but I knew one thing for certain. My life, however orderly, was about to become anything but predictable. The winter days that followed the scarf's arrival were quieter than usual, yet charged with a subtle tension I couldn't ignore. I kept finding myself glancing toward the door, half expecting Alex to appear with another gesture of thoughtfulness. It was a small, almost foolish hope, yet it filled the dull corners of my days with anticipation. In my orderly life, he had become an unpredictable element, a spark in a world that had long been muted by routine. I lived alone most of the week. My husband Richard traveled often for work, leaving me to my own devices in our modest, warmly furnished home. Our marriage, built on shared history rather than passion, had settled into a comfortable rhythm. There was no hostility between us, just the quiet, habitual companionship of people who had loved fiercely once, then softened into tolerance. And yet, in the presence of Alex, I felt a pulse of life that reminded me of a younger version of myself. A version that had once burned with desire and daring. Alex, by contrast, carried a youth I had long forgotten. His movements were easy, his laughter spontaneous, and his gaze curious, perceptive. He noticed things, little details that most people would overlook. The way I tucked my hair behind my ear when concentrating, the faint tremor in my hands when I brewed coffee too quickly, the way my eyes lit up when I spoke about things I loved. He saw me, truly saw me, and the recognition unsettled me more than I could admit. Our interactions grew slowly, almost imperceptibly. He would appear in my kitchen under the pretense of helping with charity items, or linger in the living room while I sorted paperwork, offering small comments that revealed attentiveness and a gentle humor. Each visit felt innocent enough, yet the undercurrent of something unspoken began to stir, a magnetic pull I couldn't name, but that I recognized the instant it brushed against my conscience. I caught myself imagining him in moments I shouldn't, how he looked when he laughed, the way his fingers brushed mine while stacking boxes, even the quiet intensity of his voice as he explained his thoughts. The awareness made me both exhilarated and guilty. I had always believed I was above temptation, that my life had settled into a pattern immune to such disturbances. And yet here was Alex, a man 34 years my junior, quietly unraveling the boundaries I had carefully constructed around my heart. One afternoon, as the winter sun filtered weakly through the kitchen window, he handed me a mug of cocoa, steam curling lazily in the cold light. "I thought this might help," he said, eyes bright, and I felt the familiar flutter, that strange combination of warmth and fear that had become a constant companion. I realized then that the conflict was no longer abstract. It was immediate, intimate, and unavoidable. I was caught between the life I had built, one of comfort and routine, and the unexpected pull of something alive, unpredictable, and forbidden. And as I held the mug in my hands, feeling the heat seep into my fingers, I understood that my days of passive stability were numbered. Something had begun, and there was no turning back. The days grew colder, and the snow outside thickened into a quiet, suffocating white. Inside, the warmth of the house felt almost too fragile, like it might shatter under the weight of my own thoughts. Alex's visits became more frequent, each one a deliberate intrusion into the monotony of my life. It wasn't just his presence. It was the subtle ways he occupied the space between us, the small gestures that left me feeling exposed and alive all at once. One evening, as I sorted through a pile of letters by the fireplace, Alex leaned casually against the doorframe, watching me with that unassuming intensity that had begun to unsettle me. "You always do this," he said softly, a teasing note in his voice. "Focus on everything except yourself." I glanced up, caught off guard. "I suppose I've learned to prioritize order over distractions." He smiled, but it wasn't playful. It was knowing, and it sent a shiver down my spine. There was an undercurrent in his gaze, a quiet insistence that I acknowledge something I'd been avoiding, the undeniable spark that had begun to grow between us. That night, after he left, I found myself pacing the length of the living room, heart pounding in ways I hadn't experienced for years. I thought about the scarf, the cocoa, the way his fingers had brushed mine accidentally as we stacked boxes. Was it really accidental, or was it the careful, deliberate kind of attention that only someone acutely aware of their effect could give? My mind teetered between rationalizing it all as innocence and acknowledging the forbidden desire that had been quietly creeping into my life. A week later, the tension reached a new height. He arrived unexpectedly during a snowstorm, insisting he had to check that the walkways were safe. We trudged through the snow together, shoulders brushing, breath misting in the frozen air. The shared labor should have felt ordinary, yet every glance, every accidental touch, reverberated with meaning. By the time we returned inside, my pulse was erratic, my mind spinning with conflicting emotions. "I feel something," I admitted, voice barely above a whisper as we hung our coats. The words startled me as much as they did him. He didn't respond immediately, merely regarded me with the kind of seriousness that made my chest tighten. "I think I feel it too," he said finally, quietly, truthfully. "And I've been fighting it, fighting myself because I didn't want to complicate your life." The room seemed to shrink around us, the silence heavier than any words could carry. In that instant, I understood the gravity of what had begun. This wasn't mere curiosity or fleeting attention. It was a force, raw and insistent, challenging every boundary I had drawn around my heart. As he left that evening, I watched him retreat into the snow, each step imprinting a memory I couldn't forget. The tension wasn't just external. It had burrowed into my very being, leaving me restless, exhilarated, and terrified. The winter, once cold and predictable, had become a landscape of longing, temptation, and unspoken desire. I knew then that the next encounter could change everything. The snow had stopped, leaving the world outside coated in a crystalline silence. That evening, Alex came over under the pretense of helping me organize the attic. I knew it was a ruse, both of us did, but neither of us spoke it aloud. The boxes were heavy, stacked haphazardly, and the dust that clung to forgotten memories filled the air with a dry, nostalgic scent. As we worked, the conversation drifted beyond practicalities. We talked about loneliness, regrets, and the things we'd once longed for, but never dared pursue. The intimacy of shared confessions, usually reserved for close friends or lovers, now hung between us like a fragile thread. My chest tightened with every word, my mind grappling with the realization that this connection, unexpected, forbidden, had been quietly growing, nurturing something I couldn't yet name. "I have to be honest," Alex said finally, his voice low, careful. He paused, searching my face as if looking for permission to continue. "I've tried to ignore it, to stay professional, but I can't. I've been in love with you, Eleanor. For weeks, maybe longer." The words struck me like a sudden gust of wind, unbalancing me entirely. I blinked, struggling to process the truth. Love. From him? A man 34 years my junior. Someone I had never imagined could awaken this dormant part of me. My heart raced, and for a moment, I felt both exhilarated and terrified. I don't know what to say," I whispered, my voice trembling. "You're so young, this is impossible." He stepped closer, eyes earnest, unwavering. "Age doesn't matter to me. It never has. You matter. I can't ignore it anymore." His hand hovered near mine, a question, a promise, an invitation. I wanted to retreat, to cling to the safety of my predictable life, but my body betrayed me. I didn't step back. I couldn't. The attic felt smaller, tighter, as if the world itself had shrunk around our shared truth. The dust motes danced in the fading sunlight, like stars suspended in a quiet galaxy of our own making. I realized, with a clarity both thrilling and terrifying, that this wasn't about a fleeting attraction. It was about recognition, of desire, of longing, of the parts of ourselves we thought were irretrievably lost. "I've felt it too," I admitted finally, voice barely audible. "Since the scarf, since your small gestures, I didn't want to admit it, not even to myself." A quiet smile spread across his face, relief and tenderness mingling in equal measure, and in that moment, with the attic full of dust and sunlight and the snow-silenced world outside, I understood the gravity of what we were stepping into. It was dangerous, yes, but it was real, undeniable, and utterly alive. We remained there, suspended in a silence that spoke louder than words, both of us fully aware that the choice before us could redefine the contours of our lives, and for the first time in years, I felt truly awake. The weeks that followed felt like stepping into a world reshaped by fragile yet undeniable truths. Alex and I navigated our connection cautiously, aware of the risks, yet unable, or unwilling, to deny the warmth that had taken root between us. Our interactions became a delicate balance of honesty, restraint, and moments of unspoken intimacy. Each shared smile, each lingering glance, was a reminder that life, even at 56, could still surprise and awaken the heart in ways we never imagined. I found myself reflecting on the stark contrast between the life I had carefully built and the one that now beckoned with unpredictable possibility. My marriage, my routines, my sense of order, all of it had been comfortable, but in retrospect it felt half-lived. Alex's presence was a mirror, revealing not just desire, but vitality, curiosity, and a renewed sense of purpose I had long suppressed. The scarf, once a simple winter gift, had become a symbol of that awakening. Every time I wore it, I was reminded of the tenderness behind his gesture and the courage it took for both of us to acknowledge what had been quietly blossoming. It was proof that even small acts can carry monumental significance when they touch the heart at just the right moment. I didn't know what the future held. There were boundaries to respect, decisions to make, and questions of morality and propriety that weighed heavily. And yet, I felt a rare clarity. Life was not about avoiding complications or adhering to societal expectations. It was about recognizing when something real, something transformative had entered your path. One evening, as snow began to fall once more, I held the scarf in my hands, running my fingers over its soft fibers. I thought of Alex, waiting perhaps just outside the frame of my life, and a sense of calm settled over me. This was not the story of impulsive recklessness or fleeting indulgence. It was the story of two people acknowledging a profound connection, at the edges of what they knew, and allowing themselves to feel, fully and honestly. I realized finally that warmth is not merely a physical sensation. It is the courage to embrace vulnerability, the willingness to recognize desire without shame, and the acceptance that life's most meaningful experiences often arrive unannounced. And in that quiet reflection, I understood something essential. Even in the coldest winters, the heart can rediscover heat if only we let it. As I placed the scarf back on its hook, ready for another day, I smiled softly. The world outside was icy, gray, and uncertain, but inside, my heart felt surprisingly, gloriously alive.